What brought you to Dallas when you moved to Dallas? Your parents had been there for a while.
I had been in a dead end, personally, professionally, in a dead end situation in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where we had lived for 4 years. I had gone there to become the business manager of the Chattanooga Symphony Orchestra. It was a new career for me. I had gone and taken a specialized orchestra management training course, and was hired right off the bat to go and manage the Chattanooga Symphony Orchestra. So we moved to Chattanooga from Minneapolis, where our first 4 children had already been born, and you can make mistakes very, very easily in a new profession, and I did. And I was crosswise, and I didn't realize it, with the music director. I was the business manager, but I knew something about music, and he didn't like that.
Huh.
And he and the president of the Symphony Society were very close. And so I made a mistake or two. I had already sold out the season for the first time ever in their history, and packed the house for the first time ever, and so I've done some success, but you know, you can make some other mistakes. It related to a summer season, which I didn't know about. Somehow or other, whether I didn't know about it or wasn't paying attention, I don't know. Probably the latter, and I just didn't realize it. And so they fired me. And I spent the next 3.5 years trying to figure out what the heck to do to support a family. And it didn't go very well, and Sherry was having a ball. She was very successful in a couple of enterprises. She was having a great time. But it got to the point where I just had to do something else. And it was either go back to Minneapolis, where I had been pretty successful in broadcasting, and either that or venture someplace new. We decided to go to Dallas, where my parents weren't, to start from scratch. If you go back to Minneapolis, you have to start from scratch anyway, too.
Sure.
So we went to Dallas and started from scratch, and got busy, and been here ever since.
When you were moving, did you have any hesitation about, just based on what your relationship with your parents were you particularly, were you glad to have them close by with you having young children? Was that going to be helpful to you? Was there hesitation about having them be that close in your
None.
children's
No.
lives?
None. I was just trying to make do. I was
Sure.
just trying to make things happen, and it was as good a place as any. Literally, it was that simple.
Did your relationship with your parents change when you moved into closer proximity to them?
Eventually. Yeah. How much you know about my father's and my relationship until that time, I don't know. It was not good.
Right.
Mostly since he inherited the tendency to be a tyrant kind of parent. I was not exactly a lover of what I felt he had done to me all growing up. And so I had a lot of anger issues that I was dealing with. It took me a long time to get beyond. I think I've gotten beyond most of them. You never ever get beyond all of them. But it just seemed like a right thing to do, in spite of all of that. And after we were here in Dallas for probably, I don't know, probably in Texas for about maybe 8-10 years, I decided to forgive my father. And after that, we were the best of friends. I never said anything to my father. But it changed my relationship with him. His relationship obviously eventually changed with me. And we ended up being the closest friends. When I moved to Houston, and he was, of course, still in Dallas, we spent hours on the phone, almost weekly. And very, very close. Of course, we shared musical affection and a great deal of love of that, but of each other because we respected each other. And so the dynamics changed hugely, enormously.
Was it different? Did you see a difference in how he was as a grandfather versus how he had been as a father for you?
Well, you know, grandfathers never have responsibility for their grandchildren. And either they have to tolerate them or love them, you know? And he was wonderful with the grandchildren. Always was. And we had 5 of them for them both. And my mother was always terrific with that. But he was, I only saw a great deal of affection. There must have been times when he wanted to beat them over the head. You know, I have no idea about much of it. Really no. But there seemed to be an awful lot of affection. And I think if you talk to most any of the grandchildren, they would speak with great affection about their grandfather, especially.
Did you feel that I guess when you forgave your father, I guess in the 1970, did you feel that it changed your relationship with anybody else in your family?
Everybody else.
Okay. In what way, I guess, would be the most marked difference?
Made it easier. Bit by bit. You could, once you learn to forgive somebody, you can forgive anybody. Eventually, you can even get to the point, and this is critical, and I'm very serious about this, you even can get to the point of forgiving yourself for all the shit that you've been stupid enough to dump on your own head, which we all do. And yeah, it does. It does. I think what you're really asking about is how much did it change the process of relationship with everybody else? And it does. It really does. It isn't overnight. It's still going on. That was quite a few years ago.
What was Cherry's relationship with your mom like? What was the mother-in-law relationship especially when you were all in Dallas?
I think mostly very affectionate. Very affectionate. My mother was one of those loves, you know, that she was a dear for just about everybody. She had her own ways, which and I know for darn well that Cherry would become impatient with him, but we all get impatient with somebody else. And I know that Cherry was impatient with her mother-in-law from time to time, but not that much. And no, she was great.
Did you have a close relationship with your mom?
Close
Relationship with your mom?
Did I? No.
Did your dad sort of rule the household and the way
Yes.
the relationships?
Edna, what's burning? Edna, why did you do this? Edna, what's going on here? When are you going to do this? He was the tyrant. He had a certain amount of that almost to the end. Not quite. He began to ease up.
Did you ever feel inclined to come to your mom's defense or to intervene?
Yep.
Did you ever follow through on that inclination?
Yep.
How did that go?
Well, my mother was ready to divorce my father.
Mm.
And I went with her to the lawyer that
Wow.
she decided to talk to and supported her in that. And I was ready to be on her team.
And when was that?
It was while we were living in Dallas. I think it was after we had returned from Dallas, from the first time that we lived in Austin. It was after 1970, I believe, right?
So they'd been married for many years and kids had been out of the household
1929,
many
1970
years.
something. Right? Yeah. Yep.
Just a couple other questions about.
You're sure digging into relationships big time, lady.
That's my job. That's what I was tasked with. I love these questions that came in. Someone, must have been one of your kids, said mom said she thought you wouldn't live past 45. Did you ever have a notion of how long you might live?
She thought, no, are you reading
She
that
thought
right?
she wouldn't live past 45.
She actually 40.
Wow.
She thought that she would not be. She early on, I mean very early on in our time together, said she didn't expect to live beyond 40, and she always had the saying, which she every once in a while would come up with, "I'd rather burn out than rust out." And she was always going at 192 miles an hour. Her middle name was accomplishment / achievement. And she drove everybody else nuts with it. All of us, myself, but especially the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of them. Will tell you stories about that. I have no doubt. Your parents, every one of them would say something about that. I don't know how much. She was driven to achievement and accomplishment of some sort, significance.
Mm-hmm.
That was important to her. And I think that she expected to, in the process of doing that, of living that way, she expected to be gone, just burn out. She genuinely meant that. She said that early on. And it was, I kept pointing out to her after she passed 40 and 45 and 50, it ain't happening, kid. And but it didn't change her ways too much.
And so what did you envision the trajectory of your life?
Well, at what point are you asking about?
Good question. So early in...
It's an essential question because it's changed a lot.
Sure. Early in your family days, when you had a house full of children, school-aged children, what did you... how did you imagine your life would look 30, 40 years down the road? When all the kids
Most
were
of those years that you're asking about were the Dallas years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reality is, and I haven't thought of that, to be honest with you, in these terms, but I think the reality is that I was just figuring out every day, every week, every month, every year how to survive. How to survive and prosper for the family and do what needed to be done for the family. I had my own passions, most of them in control. I was always passionate about what I did in the church, always. Mm-hmm. And for a long time I was very passionate about what I did in the motion picture business. I found that I had skills. Mm-hmm. I had gifts. I knew what I was doing. I could do it. And there was potential, and interestingly enough, my income chart graph started to go like this, just at the same time that I decided I got to spend the rest of my time as a musician. Which was kind of tough to jump off, but I did the right thing.